Well, I came up with the title after we wrapped the last episode, When the Rubber Meets the Road, Part One. This is going to be When the Rubber Meets the Road, Part
Good.
Two,
All right.
investigating a practical application of emotional sobriety. And Alan indicated,
I thought, well, wait, part two, well, let's call it, and you keep this on the recording. When the road meets the rubber.
ooh, like a palindrome. I like that.
First one was when the rubber meets the road. We're going to do when the road meets the rubber
I
because
got it.
because the road is life, the rubber is us, right?
Right.
Rubber meets the road. We're gonna flip it this time. We're gonna
Mhm.
focus on when the road meets the rubber.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
At the end of last episode, first of all, Tom, I appreciate so much, and I love you so much when I hear what you've been going through with Dee Dee and how you've shown up. I mean, man, you show up. I mean, you're showing up.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
that's fantastic. I mean, God bless you and Dee Dee, and I hope everything turns out well. I think I've mentioned a few times now in a couple different public domains that I have recently filed for disability benefits through the Veterans Administration Hospital. And it really it's one of those God shots in terms of how this happened. About 7 months ago now, I was speaking at an AA meeting to share, part of my story is being in Vietnam, coming home. And this young man comes up to me after me and says, I hope you don't feel that this is intrusive, but are you getting disability benefits, or are you getting benefits from the VA? He said, he didn't say disability. I said, oh, I got my benefits. I was on a GI Bill. I went to school, helped me get my degree. He says, no, I don't mean that. I'm sorry. He says, I mean disability. I go, I didn't, I wondered if my hearing qualified since I was in artillery, but I've never really thought about applying. He says, well, things have changed a lot since you were in the Marine Corps and since you were in Vietnam. He says, there's a thing now that's called a presumptive diagnosis. I go, what's that? He goes, if you have these conditions, it's presumed they were caused by your exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam.
Wow. Yeah.
And he says where you were at, they used a lot of defoliating agents to kill the jungle. And he says that stuff doesn't go away. Even with the monsoons there, that stuff sticks around for a long time. And you were exposed to Agent Orange. So he says, do you have hypertension? I go, yes. Do you have diabetes? I say, I'm pre-diabetic. Do you have any symptoms of diabetic? I have terrible peripheral neuropathy. Yes. And we go on. He says, how about PTSD? Were you in combat? Yes. Have you ever thought about being evaluated for PTSD? I said, no, I wasn't sure I had it. So he says, well, listen, you do what you want, but I will help you file a claim for your disability. And then what happens is once the claim gets put in the system, they will call you in. They will hire people to do the evaluation, and they will make a determination. So all you got to do is be willing to show up. Are you willing to do it? I says, well, all I got to lose is a little time, right? Well, that was right. That was a little naive, by the way, but because it really turns out that it was more meaningful than that in a lot of ways. So I go through the evaluation. They do the hearing evaluation. Major hearing loss. She goes, it's a classic artilleryman's hearing loss. He says, your hearing, so she said, your hearing's okay up to this point, just falls off the earth at these higher decibels because of the explosions that you were listening to every day. Then I go for the psychiatric evaluation for PTSD. The guy was a brilliant, semi-retired neuropsychologist, trained at one of the better universities, and met with me for over an hour. He was outstanding. Took me through the whole thing. Didn't tell me the results of his evaluation, just collected all this data. And then I went to a medical evaluation with a licensed practitioner or a physician's assistant. And she did all the medical stuff. They took blood for my diabetes and they checked my hypertension, and she did an assessment on my feet for peripheral neuropathy. And I'm telling you, a few of those gadgets she put on my feet, I had no feeling.
Wow.
None. I could not tell something. So I'm waiting to get this evaluation, right? So I call the fellow, that's my contact. He says, well, the psych eval is in. I says, have you read it? He says, I wouldn't do that without your permission. I says,
Mhm.
well, would you mind just reading it to me?
Mhm.
So he reads it. They rate you on an 8-point scale for the amount of impairment that post-traumatic stress is causing. If
Mhm.
you get an 8, you're pretty much hospitalized.
Mhm.
You're impaired. You can't function in the world.
Mhm.
He gave me a 7.
Jesus.
That's exactly what I said. And I said, and he says, and he explains why you got a 7. He says, because of the difficulty your post-traumatic stress has caused in you sustaining intimate relationships.
Mm. Wow.
I said, and what does he say? He says, you've been married 3 times.
Mhm.
And it hit me. Oh my God. I'm going through this stuff, right? I've talked to you guys a little earlier
Mhm. Mhm.
about the situation with my wife and I, and we're, facing some challenges in our marriage. But, I've been married, I divorced twice, and I'm in my 3rd relationship. And
Mhm.
it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Mm.
I have been damaged so much more. And then the physical stuff came back. All impairment. I'm impaired
Mhm.
across all the
Mhm.
quadrants that they evaluated me in.
Mhm.
Well, my first thing was to be really angry. I was fought in this stupid war for what? I mean,
Mhm.
that was a
Right.
political war. We had no business being involved in that
Right.
thing.
Right.
It's like, my God, and now I'm paying dearly for it.
Mhm.
I will get some compensation, but that's not going to compensate, the
No.
loss in my feeling in my feet, my
No.
difficulty I've had in other areas of my relationship and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But here's where the road meets the
Meets
rubber,
the
right?
rubber.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the road. This is the road I'm on. This is
Mhm.
what has happened. And it's not through any fault of my own.
Mhm.
I joined the Marine Corps because I'm patriotic. I love this country. I defend it in a heartbeat. At 17, I didn't know what the hell Vietnam meant. I was too
Mhm.
naive to
Mhm.
understand today with that consciousness, I wouldn't have volunteered to fight in
Mhm.
Vietnam.
Mhm.
I don't think we had any business being there.
Mhm.
But that's not who I was then. That's not where my head was at then.
Mhm.
That's not the consciousness I had. So now I'm confronted with what all this means for me today in my life. And it has a lot of meaning. The first thing was I got really mad. Now, I'll
Mhm.
tell you, Patrick, you and Tom, that I was
Mhm.
outraged that I was in that situation, that my country put me there. I felt
Mhm.
betrayed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I got to the road meeting the rubber and said, you know
Mhm.
what? That's all true. And it's
Mhm.
a pity. And it was unfortunate we got involved in it, but that has happened for you, Alan. And now
Mhm.
it's about dealing with what all of this means.
Mhm.
And it means now getting some help for your post-traumatic stress. Tom,
Mhm.
I never even thought I had it.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the road meeting the rubber.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
did not even know that I suffered from that. And to this degree,
Right.
my God. And I think I'm a pretty self-aware guy.
Mhm.
This was a blind spot for me, man.
Mhm.
A big blind spot. Now, I don't blame all of my interpersonal difficulties on that. I think that growing up, you guys know a little bit of my
Yeah.
history and how I had to
Mhm.
retreat in myself when my dad died to take care of
Mhm.
myself.
Mhm.
Moving into myself to protect myself and withdrawing is something I know too well. The Vietnam experience, I think, amplified that and
Yeah.
exacerbated it, right? It definitely made that worse.
Well, and I'm not an expert on this, but I'm pretty sure that people who have earlier trauma are people who are more likely to have post-traumatic stress diagnosable, in combat. It's like, I mean, there's already a pathway, kind of play there. And the other thing is, we perceive by contrast. And so, you got to remember, you're 17, you were a kid, so what we're describing is your entire adult life. It's like, why did you not think it was it? Because this has been your norm.
Yeah.
This is your life. And it's like, and I would say you've done pretty damn well by yourself. You functioned well. It's like, but yeah, you didn't have any. How the hell would you be able to detect
No,
that
of
in
course.
yourself? You
I
couldn't.
no, I couldn't, man. It's just, but and I'm saying this too, and I wanted to share it because there may be some vets out there listening to this, and you may not realize,
Yeah.
what's going on with you because you coped with it the same way I did. I'm tough. I'm a Marine, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get my leg blown off, so I'm okay.
Right.
My buddy's got his legs blown off, but I
Right.
didn't.
That's the contrast that you actually use. Yeah. How many people have it so much worse than I do? And it's like, okay, but according to that definition, I don't have. There's no problem.
I'd feel bad taking the money.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
else should get the money that really deserves it. I have that in
Mhm.
my head, man.
Yeah.
That's some of that thinking that I've got. And that's what kept me holding this stuff at a distance,
Mhm.
right? Without really bringing it in. And so,
Mhm.
as I say this to you guys, I just feel very sad about it all right now
Mhm.
and what it means. And at the same time, and this is the thing that I think has happened because of emotional sobriety, I'm also glad it's happening that I'm facing it.
Yes.
There's two feelings, sadness and excitement. Excitement
Yes.
that I've got a chance to deal with this. I hope it's not too late. I hope I can deal with this stuff that I need to deal with in a way and, improve my relationship with Jess. And I think it shows up more with her than the kids, but it's got to also show up with the kids in some way.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about the possibility of that.
Yeah, and it's so important. I think that's one of the things we want to always emphasize here with the podcast is getting out of this myth of singularity that the more we're always going to have multiple feelings, multiple opinions, thoughts like that, and the idea that that sadness and that excitement coexist, that's just part of being human. That's normal. It's like a lot of times we just end up what we do is we call that confusion. I'm confused because because I don't know do I feel this way or do I feel that way? What you're doing, what you have because of the work you've done is you're not caught in that either or. You're going like, no, I have both of those experiences, and they're not, they're not taking turns. They're simultaneous.
They're right there. They're both
Mhm.
there. I can feel it when we
Mhm.
talk.
Yeah, and
By
and
taking
being aware of them is sanity. That's the sane. Yeah.
taking out the blind spot is a very kind of uncomfortable, invasive experience, right? But then the doing of it makes you more complete, right? It brings you into the world just a little bit more, right? And that's the carrot.
You go into the response you have that you kind of travel back in time with and experience although emotions always are in the present time. So but you travel back in time cognitively, but it's like emotionally you feel maybe different than other times before, but probably something you felt before is the outrage about all of what Vietnam and what your being in Vietnam meant, and what all your friends and colleagues, who suffered and many didn't make it through. And then what I heard you do though is you let yourself have those feelings. There are other things we cannot change. Most of it. Some things we can change. There's some things we can do, and then you get busy.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's amazing to me about this story is how long the delay was. I mean, the past not being done with you, and like how it reared up and kicked you at a time in your life, decades after you thought you'd had the last word on that experience, or you were able to tidy it up and kind of put it
I
in
did.
its box.
I thought I
Yeah.
had it all packaged, man.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had this all wrapped up in a little bow, and then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, this whole area opens up for me.
Wow.
So look, I think the real, there's always two sides, right? So one of the
Mm-hmm.
silver linings here is I will get VA medical care the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
not have to pay a penny for it.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing, and you guys know the
Mm-hmm.
cost of that. I mean,
Right.
even my wife has great insurance.
Mm-hmm.
My drugs and stuff cost a fortune, my prescriptions,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Yep.
So, there is a silver lining in some of this stuff. I will be
Mm-hmm.
compensated to some degree, and it's just doesn't go back to 30 years from now, or else I could retire. But it'll go back to it will go back to about 8-9 months, which is great. I mean, that'll be appreciated, especially going forward in my life.
Well,
Anyway,
that's emotional sobriety too. Even hell, it's emotional sobriety even for me, who grew up in that time and have my own thoughts and feelings about Vietnam. It's like in the unfairness of treatment of veterans. It's like staying, keeping our balance is not getting lost in that. It's like not getting lost in the resentment. It's like, because I can feel when you said I'll get this care from VA for the rest of my life, and I'm going, guy in my head goes like, well, that ain't enough. It's like that, but it's like the same thing. Come back and go like, yeah, but that's what it is, and that's what you're dealing with, and that's how you're handling it.
Yeah.
Was there temptation to not open Pandora's box when that guy confronted you after the meeting? Did you have a sense of, I'm going to
I was too naive.
Luckily,
this is a story. This is a story that actually begins with my favorite beginning of stories. There I was minding my own business.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly how this story began. And I'm very appreciative.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm glad for the positive part of the outcome, and the other part, just the validation, of some of the things that have, because I've known you quite a while now, and it's like, and one thing I would never say you're any good at being a victim. So it's like that's to your credit that you have walked through this stuff with stuff that basically, what we talk about in I guess the road meeting the rubber. That's what it is. It's like you didn't ask for any of that stuff. I mean, it's like it happened. You made choices. You decided you went into the Marines. You did this and you did. But it's like the details of this stuff. It's what happened. And it's you're not a victim to it. Your job is to be responsible to respond to it.
Yeah. Yeah, we could say I was a victim to Agent Orange because it was exposed to it, but now where I'm not an emotional victim to it, like you're saying, is what I'm going to do with dealing with it. The other thing that came in mind here when you were sharing that, Rumi has this wonderful poem, Up All Night, a talking that hurt. Now it's time to do the work. I am in personal therapy, and I'm going to do some couples work to try to see if I can unravel some of this stuff and be able to enjoy however much time I've got left on this planet.
A grace to me is that this information came to you at a time when I feel like you're the most equipped to deal with it in an emotionally sober way.
Well, and that's because of the work you've done.
We've been talking about, or we just began talking about steps 8 and 9. There's a reason why those steps come so late in the 12-step process. It's because we're not ready to really face the full reality of who we were and what we were doing.
Well, let's use that. So our next podcast, let's focus on making amends. I've got, talking about my difficulty in relationships. About 3 months ago, I reached, I'm on and off in contact with my first wife. And about 3 months ago, I reached out and made amends for some of the things that I look back at, and I realized I had never made amends for. And the way I did it really pissed her off. And last night, we spent a good hour really digesting what happened. And I'm telling you, man, everything that I got that I was able to see with this post-traumatic stress and the protective eye that I talked about to retreat myself. Oh my God, did that show up in my first marriage? And boy, did that hurt her. I did a lot of damage, and I got to make amends in a very clean way last night. And,
good.
Not that this is, for her, it was great. She says, this was incredibly important for me. I have been holding the pain and the trauma over this for a long, long time. And she says, you have uplifted my soul tonight. So we'll talk about that. I'll share some of that stuff with you.
Okay. Well, Allen, you're a good man, and I love you very much.
I love you too, man.
I love you both. Until next time.
Change your life. Change your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.